Let me walk you through what's really going on. Check it out. The Fed just cut rates again and quietly stopped shrinking their $6.6 trillion balance sheet. They're rolling every treasury that comes due and sliding more money into short-term bills, just to keep the plumbing in the economy from rattling. All while inflation is still stubbornly hanging around 3%. And they're out there saying, yep, it's still restrictive. So on the surface, it looks tough. But underneath, they're just kind of easing off the gas. But here's what stands out the most. QT, it finally hit the wall. And you could hear it. Repo markets were coughing, bank funding was tight, so the Fed said, again, all right, it's far enough. And cutting rates with inflation still above target, I mean, that tells you the economy's not running as hot as the speeches make it sound. Balance sheets basically parked right now, which means the liquidity hose is back on a low drip. And this new inflation minus tariffs thing, that's just giving them a little bit of wiggle room to say it's not as bad as the number that you and I are actually paying. The easiest way to picture this is, so have you ever gone on a diet and then you find out someone in the house stopped throwing away the snacks and quietly restocked the snack drawer? Yeah, the diet, it's still technically on. But you know the truth. That's the Fed. And here's what shifts because of it. Borrowing, it's going to get a little bit easier. Your risk of some sudden liquidity crunch gets a little bit lower. Treasury gets help rolling its mountain of debt without blowing out rates. And if you're trying to save your way forward, your real return, it's going to drop again. That is not fun. I'm just being honest. And here's why this is hitting home for people. If you borrow, this is a little tailwind. But if you save, it's more of a headwind. And if you're nervous about another 2019 moment, this pulls that risk down a tiny notch. But if you're looking at your nest egg and inflation's already chewing on it, this move doesn't exactly save the day. And here's the part that most folks that they never hear about. The real line is in the sand is not 2% inflation. It's whether the Treasury market and short-term funding system start twitching. QT, it always stops right there. It doesn't matter what the speech says. And Powell's whole driving in the fog line, that's Army speak for we're not truly sure what's ahead. So we're just gonna back off a bit. Now here's how the different experts see it. Mainstream folks are like, hey, this avoids a liquidity mess. Good call. Inflation hawks are saying, dude, this is way too soon. You just blinked. Macro traders already assume the balance sheet's a permanent tool now and some emergency fire extinguisher. And the contrarian crowd, they're shouting this is stealth easing from the rooftops. And you test all of them the same way. Watch real rates, watch the repo usage, and if they stay stressed. The Fed has not fixed much, but there's still an angle nobody is tracking yet. We just figured out how low bank reserves can go before the Fed will step in. We also learned the balance sheet isn't heading back to 3 trillion or 4 trillion. That ship has sailed. And the move toward Treasury bills tells you exactly where they plan to support things without looking like they're pumping long bonds. So yeah, the next few years are probably a mix of big balance sheets, light rate cuts, and tweaks anytime something squeaks. And yes, there are two totally valid interpretations here. One says good, they protected the plumbing. That's smart. The other says you caved. Inflation's too high. And honestly, both of these are fair. But if you zoom out, the big players, they're thinking this way. The Fed just confirmed the real constraint is the Treasury market, not the inflation target. And from here on out, liquidity management is the quiet mission. And here are the questions everybody's asking right now. Does this set up another asset boom? Does QT just end for real? What happens to savings if real returns slide towards zero again? Is this a slow replay of the 2019 mess? And seriously, why cut with inflation still at 3%? Because if we can predict anything, here's what we still need to know. Are you mostly a borrower, a saver, or an investor right now? How much floating rate or short-term credit are you exposed to? What is your real return after inflation? And how would your plan shift if rates ease for a few years instead of climbing? If you got insight on any of these, drop it in the comments. It helps everyone. Has anything like this happened before? Here's how it played out last time, back in 2013. The Fed softened up after markets bucked. In 2019, repo blew up and needed emergency cash. And in 2020, we all remember they opened up the fire hose. Now in 2025, QT stress pulled them right back into support mode. The pattern's boringly consistent. Liquidity strains and tightening, not inflation targets. Here's the quick version for the high-income professional. Look, if you're in medicine, tech, Finance, you're already slammed. You don't have time to decode Fed mechanics between meetings and kids' practices. Think of this like backup power in a hospital or a server room. The lights flickered, so the Fed flipped on the extra generator. And then they pretend nothing happened. And the real takeaway is this: don't build your plan around speeches. Build it around what the system is actually doing. And right now, the system is easing. And if you're sitting here thinking, all right, but what do I do with that? That's actually where most people stall out. They feel the pressure, they see the cracks, but they don't know how to move without spending 6 months on YouTube or making one bad call they later regret. And that's why I pulled this one video out for you to watch next. It walks you through how beginners go from knowing nothing to owning their first solid income generating property in about 90 days. Even if real estate feels brand new to you, you'll see exactly how people make that first move without blowing up their schedule, without taking a low-paying job in real estate, and without becoming a landlord.